Hi, friends. Welcome to Moments to Ponder. This is a podcast designed to help you spend a few moments in God's Word, gain fresh perspectives, and find meaningful takeaways to ponder throughout your week. I'm Betsy Marvin, and this is episode 144. Before we begin, I just want to apologize that I've been a little off in my schedule, and for those of you who listen to me every week, I so appreciate you, and I thank you for hanging in there with me as it's just been a really busy season. I'm preparing to retire from my job after 28 years, and there's just been a lot of elements that go into that. So here we are, episode 144, John chapter 18. As we begin John 18, supper is done, the evening is wearing on. Jesus and his disciples have made their way through Jerusalem and have been in the Garden of Gethsemane. John doesn't write of the prayers of Jesus in the garden. He has made it very clear that Jesus is troubled. The Word who was God, the Word who is God, the light of the world, the bread of life, is ready. Verse 1. After saying these things, meaning the vine conversations at the temple and the prayer, Jesus crossed the Kidron Valley with his disciples and entered a grove of olive trees. Judas, the betrayer, knew this place, because Jesus had often gone there with his disciples. The leading priests and Pharisees had given Judas a contingent of Roman soldiers and temple guards to accompany him. Now, with blazing torches, lanterns, and weapons, they arrive at the olive grove. A contingent of soldiers and temple guards. Now, a contingent could be 200 to 500 soldiers. Honestly, it could even be more. This is not a small unit, but a large show of force, along with priests and Pharisees. It actually makes me think of the villagers in Beauty and the Beast when Gaston is storming the castle and they're marching through the valley with their torches raised and anger on their faces. Like, that's the picture I have. It's a parade of strength walking through the night, weapons drawn, violence in their hearts, and they come to the quiet of the garden. From the other gospel accounts, we know that the disciples were really sleepy, so imagine the adrenaline kick as they wake up to the clank of armor and the sound of marching feet. Verse 4. Jesus fully realized all that was going to happen to him, so he stepped forward to meet them. "Who are you looking for?" he asked. "Jesus, the Nazarene," they replied. "I am he," Jesus said. Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. As Jesus said, "I am he," they all drew back and fell to the ground. Okay, don't skip over this. John writes that they all drew back and fell. What was that? I mean, first, Jesus doesn't hide, he doesn't run, he just calmly steps up and meets the force in front of him, and he speaks to them. I mean, does this surprise them? Did it shock them a bit and cause them to stumble? Or is there power in these words that literally bowl them over? In the original context, Jesus just says, "I am." These are the words of God with Moses. Jesus is being very clear. I am the bread of life, the resurrection, and I am the life. I am the way and the truth. I am. Jesus is showing his power, and it was felt in that moment. A little shot across the bow to remind them of what he could do if he wanted to. But he doesn't. Instead, he just asks them again. Verse 7. Once more he asked them, "Who are you looking for?" And again they replied, "Jesus the Nazarene." "I told you that I am he," Jesus said. "And since I am the one you want, let these others go." He did this to fulfill his own statement, I did not lose a single one of those you have given me. Then Simon Peter drew a sword and slashed off the right ear of Malchus, the high priest's slave. But Jesus said to Peter, Put your sword back into its sheath. Shall I not drink from the cup of suffering the Father has given me? In the reading, I don't think we can fully appreciate the tension and the disbelief going on here. The huge presence of the military and the temple strength included, the weapons, the darkness, the fear, the betrayal. It's no wonder Peter acted out. He was going to protect Jesus with his life, remember? Yet, Jesus stops him with words that must have been said with a firm resolve. I have my cup to drink. John doesn't record it, but in Luke 22, verses 51 to 53, we read a little more about this moment. Jesus said, No more of this, and he touched the man's ear and healed him. Then Jesus spoke to the leading priests, the captain of the temple guard, and the elders who had come for him. Am I some dangerous revolutionary, he asked, that you come with swords and clubs to arrest me? Why didn't you arrest me in the temple? I was there every day. But this is your moment, the time when the power of darkness reigns. One last miracle before the one of resurrection to come. Jesus touches the man's ear and it's healed. That's it. No mention of how this affected anyone. And then from there, the story becomes a little disjointed. It splits into two parts. We follow what's happening with Jesus in the house, and we also follow what's happening with Peter out in the courtyard. Verse 12. So the soldiers, their commanding officer, and the temple guards arrested Jesus and tied him up. First, they took him to Annas, since he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest at the time. Caiaphas was the one who had told the other Jewish leaders, it's better that one man should die for the people. This piece here is a bit of a nod to Isaiah 53. Jesus is bound and being led toward the altar as a sacrifice. And he's taken first to one man and then another, because this is pretty much an illegal quick trial that they're trying to pull off. Okay, that's one side of the story. Here's the other, verse 15. Simon Peter followed Jesus, as did another of the disciples. That other disciple was acquainted with the high priest, so he was allowed to enter the high priest's courtyard with Jesus. Peter had to stay outside the gate. Then the disciple who knew the high priest spoke to the woman watching at the gate, and she let Peter in. Through a variety of different commentaries, it's believed that the other disciple mentioned here is John. He had some kind of connection to the high priest's home and thus the servants. It might have been that the Zebedees did business with these guys. Peter, maybe because of his loyalty, has followed John, and whatever the circumstance, John's connection gets Peter into the courtyard. It's been quite a night. It's late. Peter is cold, tired, probably feeling the drain of energy since the confrontation and violence in the garden. Maybe he even had blood on his clothes. And he also had to be afraid. He'd cut off an ear, and although it had been healed, were the soldiers looking for him? So there's some panic of being caught, as well as needing to know what's happening to Jesus. And these things are at war inside of Peter as the woman lets him in through the gate. And as he enters, we get to verse 17. The woman asked Peter, "You're not one of that man's disciples, are you?" In many other translations, the woman actually asks if he is also a disciple, or are you a disciple too? Giving the impression that she knows that John is one. Yet Peter answers her at the end of verse 17. "No," he said, "I am not." Because it was cold, the household servants and the guards had made a charcoal fire. They stood around it warming themselves, and Peter stood with them warming himself. There were probably so many excuses swirling in Peter's head for saying what he had said. He did deny Jesus. He said he wasn't a disciple. And then he just tries to blend in with the group around the fire. Smell is one of those senses that really triggers memory. And I wonder if the smell of a charcoal fire would forever remind Peter of this moment when he denied Jesus. Yet there is another charcoal fire in his future that we'll talk about later. Verse 19, the story shifts. Inside, the high priest began asking Jesus about his followers and what he had been teaching them. Jesus replied, "Everyone knows what I teach. I have preached regularly in the synagogues and at the temple where the people gather. I have not spoken in secret. Why are you asking me this question? Ask those who heard me. They know what I said." Then one of the temple guards standing nearby slapped Jesus across the face. "Is that the way to answer the high priest?" he demanded. Jesus replied, "If I said anything wrong, you must prove it. But if I'm speaking the truth, why are you beating me?" Then Annas bound Jesus and sent him to Caiaphas, the high priest. It's interesting that Annas was asking Jesus about his disciples. It seems as if influence was a really huge concern for this aging high priest. Jesus has nothing to hide and says so, which brings a slap from the guard. Then Jesus brings their own rules into play when he tells them, "You guys got to prove this." It was the duty of the high priest to produce witnesses against Jesus for this to even be a legal proceeding, yet there were no other witnesses called forward. When Jesus is slapped across the face, we can see how out of control this is becoming, and Annas knows it. They're not following their own standards and practices of justice. And with this call out, Annas sends Jesus to his son-in-law, the current high priest, who has the actual power to do something. Meanwhile, as Simon Peter was standing by the fire warming himself, they asked him again, "You're not one of his disciples, are you?" He denied it, saying, "No, I am not." But one of the household slaves of the high priest, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, asked, "Didn't I see you out there in the olive grove with Jesus?" Again, Peter denied it, and immediately a rooster crowed. A relative of Malchus is there. Of course this person would have recognized Peter. He was there. He saw it. He would remember such a violent act that hadn't happened that long ago. The accusation is coming from a witness. But Peter is in too deep to backpedal now, so he denies Jesus for the third time. In Luke 22, we read that the Lord turned and looked at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said to him, "Before the cock crows today, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly. I've often wondered what was in that look, the look that Jesus gave Peter. Were Jesus' eyes filled with sadness and hurt? Or was there compassion and love? Maybe tears. Whatever Peter saw there, it brought him to bitter tears as he came to terms with what he had done. We could go on and on about Peter here. How he failed Jesus, how he lacked courage, his disloyalty in the moment. But in many ways, it would be the pot calling the kettle black. I think if we're honest, we have all failed Jesus at some point. It's why we identify with Peter so often. There is so much we can take away from this passage. But here's one thing for you to ponder in your coming week. Has there ever been a time when you were tempted to deny or minimize your relationship with God? And why were you tempted? I mean, is denying Jesus just words, or can our actions be a sign of denial as we do things or say things that minimize Jesus in our lives? Whenever I'm asked what I do, as in my job, there's a little hesitation in me. Invariably, when I say I work at a church, there's a reaction. Some people stop talking to me. Some give me that, "Oh, you think you're so holy" look of judgment. And thankfully, some speak of their faith. So because of this, I can find myself skirting the answer with, "I work with young people," or "I teach." But when I skirt the answer or avoid it, am I denying or minimizing my relationship with Jesus? When people ask you about your faith, do you hesitate? Does the life you live prove your relationship with Him or deny it? Heavy questions. I notice that Peter is his most brave when he is at the table or in the garden, surrounded by his community. When he is with others, he steps up. But he's his most fearful and disloyal when he's alone. I think it's the same for us. It's such a reminder of the power of community in our lives. When we're alone, we're so much more vulnerable to temptation, more susceptible to fear, and this may lead us to stumble. Yet, like Peter, we gain courage when we stand with others, knowing that they're with us. It helps us stand strong. Oh, dear one. We will face times when we know that we've let God down, when we've minimized Him in our lives or even hidden our faith. And in those moments, remember, you have a God that is love. He is merciful and forgiving over and over again because He loves you. I pray that, like Peter, you have a community that encourages you and empowers you to live your faith with courage and conviction. And if not, I pray that God will bring you to a community where you can thrive. As you walk into this week ahead, may you stand strong, knowing that even as Peter denied Him, there is still quite a story ahead of him, and it's the same for you. Amen.